Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everybody, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to this, the final Being Well Together webinar of 2024. This month's webinar is entitled Workplace Wellbeing, the Reality, Opportunities, and the Messy Middle. Before I introduce our guest speaker for this month's webinar, we'd just like to run a short video whilst we let the rest of our audience assemble. So just bear with us and we'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. Thanks. Well, welcome back, everybody. We have a nice audience now assembled. So now I'm going to introduce our speaker, Candice Ford. Candice is the support manager of Being Well Together here at the British Safety Council. Candice's career has spanned 3 continents and multiple industries: consultancy, health and fitness, entrepreneurship, and now well-being. The common thread through her career has been human performance, exploring how to create environments where people can thrive and then building them. New to the world of workplace well-being, Candice has taken this as an opportunity to look at well-being with a fresh lens and apply lessons from other industries to well-being in the workplace. As Being Well Together support manager, Candice helps organizations navigate the challenges of assessing well-being, interpreting data, and developing robust strategies to develop well-being as a business imperative and not simply as a nice to have. So without further ado, over to you, Candice. Looking forward to this.
Thank you very much, David. Hello, everybody, and welcome. As you heard, my name is Candice, and I am the support manager in the Being Well Together team here at the British Safety Council. I'm delighted to be with you today to talk about the messy middle when it comes to workplace well-being. But before we dive into the slides, I want you to bear one thing in mind. As you heard from my bio, my background is in human performance. For over a decade, I owned and ran the first CrossFit gym in the Middle East and competed internationally for 5 of those years. Now, as a competitive athlete, I started every competitive season with a testing phase, identifying my strengths and weaknesses, needs and opportunities, as well as the changes in the sport. And this allowed myself and my coaches to build a program that I needed to excel. And this approach was not the exclusive domain of me as an athlete. I developed my coaching team in the same way, 360-degree performance appraisals, assessing their coaching, teamwork, and interaction with our clients, layering their development in the sport with our expectations as a business. We took this approach with our clients too, assessing and onboarding them, and adjusting our approach to meet their unique needs. In their case, it looked like a movement assessment in the gym, but by giving them one thing to focus on, we saw ripples in all areas of their life. And for our international viewers today, I can confirm that this approach runs across cultures. We had 6 different nationalities in the team and 76 different nationalities in the wider gym population, which meant which meant vastly different learning styles and expectations. And the one thing that I have learned, the lesson that I have brought with me into the world of well-being, is that to improve performance, you need to know where you are starting. Because ultimately, if you aim at nothing, you hit nothing. Today, we're not talking about CrossFit. We're going to look at workplace well-being, how it is defined and how it shows up in reality, the opportunities that well-being presents, and the messy middle, the challenging place between best intentions and reality. Here at the British Safety Council, we define well-being as an individual's ongoing state which enables them to thrive. We are looking at the whole person, the individual, not an employee in isolation. So I want you to consider, are your people thriving? CIPD goes a step further and has identified 7 domains of well-being. Most people think that well-being is physical and mental health, and more recently, financial well-being. And it is, but there is much more. By considering the 7 domains of well-being, you can take a holistic view of well-being and support your individuals, your employees, accordingly. This holistic, integrated view of well-being is critical. In fact, our well-being services are built around the domains of well-being because we know that all of these domains matter. And definitions matter. They give us something to hang our well-being hats and hopefully our strategies on. In the case of well-being, we have a complete, holistic, expansive, and to the point definition. But there are also challenges, and I'll come on to those in a second. What I want you to know is that wherever you are on your journey, well-being is worth it. Anecdotally and in the research, we consistently see that well-being is good for business. Happy employees are more productive. Well-being improves retention and engagement. And well-being more than pays for itself. For every £1 spent on well-being, on average, organisations will see a return of £5.30. Those are better rates than we're going to get in the bank. So, all in all, well-being is good for business. Well, effective well-being is good for business. You see, not all well-being initiatives are created equal, and not all employees have the same well-being needs. And this is where the messy middle begins. So, to those challenges, well, they're the same. The definition is too complete, and I would argue too tidy. The reality is, well-being is human, and humans are messy. People are not the sum of their parts, they are more. People do not leave their problems at the door, whether they are in a virtual or a physical workplace. Life and work do mix, and we have to respond accordingly. A few months ago, I was the sleep-deprived new mum, recently back from maternity leave, trying to concentrate while my body was screaming to feed a baby that was at nursery. I've seen it in people in the gym, ticking their exercise box and going home to a bar of chocolate and a bottle of wine to ease the stress of the day. And I will never forget my very first job. I stuck it out in a toxic work environment for 13 months. When I finally left, I had a beard of stress-induced acne to show for my time there. It does not matter how well-being articulate you are. Life happens. And this is the messy middle. So, to save your eyes, we are going to go back to a plain slide, but welcome to the messy middle. The reality is, well-being is still not on everyone's radar. And if it is, there are a plethora of challenges to be faced. An aging workforce. Ooh, apologies, I lost my slide for a second there. An aging workforce who have increasing medical needs. Post-COVID changes to the way we work, whether that is online, remote, different requirements in the workplace. Employee engagement is increasingly being recognized as an issue with well-being. Remote, hybrid, and lone working. How do you cater to the needs of this changing workforce? Male-dominated workforces. And I mention male-dominated workforces partly because I know much of our audience today sit in the male-dominated world of health and safety, but also because culturally we see less buy-in to classic well-being interventions from men, as well as higher rates of suicide in the workplace and in general. Another issue in the messy middle is not knowing where to start. With so many jobs and obligations and requirements, knowing where to begin with this new thing called well-being is a real challenge for a lot of organizations. Top-down buy-in. We know increasingly that unless there is engagement from the top of an organization, rolling out well-being further down is much, much more challenging. And lastly, high expectations on ill-equipped middle managers. And it's these ill-equipped middle managers I want to talk to you about today. These are the people who are expected to be the face of well-being in most organizations. And yet they all too often find themselves trapped between the increasing and often contradicting demands of the front line and the bottom line. And it gets messier. These middle managers often lack the skills needed to navigate this new dimension of well-being management. And possibly, worst of all, they end up stressed and trapped between their targets and their own mental health. When we facilitate focus groups for organizations and have the opportunity to speak with line managers, time and time again, we hear that they are stuck in this vacuum of workload and management responsibility, which undoubtedly affects their well-being. And we are not alone in identifying this need. In their most recent Health and Wellbeing at Work report, CIPD identified the top challenge in organizations is line manager skills and confidence to support well-being. And adding more to the burden on middle management is the second most common challenge around employee engagement. Line manager challenges are not just a problem for health and well-being. They are a business problem. Management style remains among the top causes of stress-related absence. Poor line management is one of the top 3 reasons that people leave a job. Think about it. That middle manager is being pushed and pulled in different directions, doesn't have the skills or confidence to support employee well-being, and is struggling under their own workload and stress, not to mention any additional external factors. In the long term, they cannot and will not cope. They are stressed, may well become short with their team or unable to manage their needs. This is going to impact employee satisfaction, well-being, and further add to the burden. It's a vicious cycle. Supporting line managers is not a well-being nice to have. It is a business imperative. And I want to make it very clear. Well-being is here to stay. There is no waiting for it to pass or riding it out. And just like seatbelts, asbestos, smoking, our attitudes and awareness will change. It may be costly and inconvenient to begin with, but in the long term, social responsibility, effectiveness, and return on investment will make well-being a no-brainer. Every level of every organization needs to know what well-being is. Right now, that may be a tall order, especially if you have a male-dominated workforce like we spoke about earlier, or employees with different cultural expectations of well-being. Perhaps you have a disparate workforce of lone, hybrid, factory and office workers. Or perhaps you just have a very large, messy middle. But change is coming. So, where do you start? What do you do when you have no well-being function, no well-being champions or buy-in? And yes, I'm going to talk to you about how we can help. But before I get there, I want to loop back to where we started. To know where you are going, you have to know where you are. Let's talk about let's talk about that manager in the messy middle. This is a little on the nose, but he works in an organization of middle-aged male accountants, so probably doesn't need menopause awareness training or financial well-being support. Actually, his partner is going through a very difficult menopause, and the changing market is threatening his retirement plans. You see, you cannot assume what the well-being needs of your employees are. And it's not just my personal or convenient anecdotes that show this. We see it consistently with our supporters, and I'll share some of those examples with you in a moment. So where do you start? You look at your organization, your data, your pain points, and you talk to your people. Only then can you make a plan, build a strategy, and support well-being. A few years ago, we encouraged one of our supporters to look at their data. Exit interviews, accident and incident reporting, sickness absence, to name a few. In this process, they discovered an employee was consistently missing 1 day of work a week, every week, for over a year. It was never the same day and always a different reason, but it had gone unnoticed until they looked at the data. It turned out, following conversations with the employee, that he was having a really hard time at home, and the stress was seeping into all areas of his life. By having a conversation, the manager was able to support the employee and set goals that he felt capable of achieving. Fast forward 6 months, the same employee was not only attending work as normal, but he was able to sort out his challenges at home. This was great for the employee and also a win for the organization. More productivity from an employee, leveraging sunk training costs and inherent knowledge, and saving on recruitment and training costs had the employee not stayed with the organization. And there are dozens of examples like this. Another organization had an entire field-based department. They never came into the office. They had nothing to do with the wider team. But following an employee well-being survey, they began coming to the office, joining the employee voice forum and engaging with the well-being program. This was a direct result of the organization asking for their well-being input and acting on what they heard. I have 2 examples of an organization where speaking to employees through focus groups identified needs that ran contrary to what the organization thought they needed to do. One organization thought their line managers needed well-being training and was prepared to spend thousands of pounds to develop a bespoke well-being workshop. However, focus groups of line managers identified the actual need was operational training. In many cases, they knew what well-being was, but needed training on new systems that they were expected to use. By having that training, they were able to dedicate more time to the well-being in their team. Another organization delivered loads of great training to their team. However, focus groups later identified that workload and human resourcing was a far bigger concern. And in addition, they had a new and growing overseas team and needed support around cultural integration. So this organization had spent budget and added to the workload burden through unnecessary training and missed a far greater opportunity around cultural integration. One last example, and this is for any of you who are thinking, we're doing well. Well-being is about making us great. I've recently been working with an organization who are hoping to use well-being as a differentiator. They are already a leading organization in their competitive field, but they want well-being to do 2 things. First, make them an employer of choice. And second, set the standard in their industry. Trouble is, when you are already good, it is hard to pin down what will make you great. It isn't about solving problems, but elevating experience. And this is when well-being tips into culture and all of the unique challenges that come with that. Navigating in this world requires you to talk to your people and listen. You see, slinging well-being stuff at employees isn't enough. You have to get clear on what is needed and wanted. So to reiterate, look at your data, from accidents and near misses to sickness absence, and the cost of recruitment. Consider your pain points. What comes up on pulse surveys? Why do people leave? And talk to your people. What are they saying and what do they need and want? Because well-being is here to stay. It is not a flash in the pan, and we are seeing it appearing as a line item on more and more P&Ls. You want to get it right? The best way to do that is with research and a robust plan. So remember, to know where you are going, you need to know where you are. Well-being is messy, and it is here to stay. So don't make assumptions, make a plan. And most importantly, if you need help, ask. The British Safety Council offers a wide range of health, safety and wellbeing training, some directed specifically at directors, line managers and employees to meet those unique needs. We also provide audits so you can assess your progress. More specifically, the Being Well Together programme is the wellbeing arm of the British Safety Council. We offer the Being Well Together programme to help you assess your needs and build a wellbeing strategy. And as we have discussed today, it is assessing those needs and truly getting to the heart of an organisation that is really important to help build a strategy that supports wellbeing. We also offer a wide range of consultancy services to meet and support those unique needs. That can be through focus groups, workshops, or bespoke end-to-end solutions. In fact, it is through this work that we meet a lot of those line managers that we've talked about today. And third, we are able to get to the, as a third party, we are able to get to the core of the issues and bypass the pressure of in-house expectations. As you heard earlier, that can save thousands of pounds by not investing in unwanted training and actually meeting the real needs of an organisation. Because as we also heard, on average, every pound invested in wellbeing sees a £5.30 return. And at our heart, the British Safety Council is a charity. Our Keep Thriving campaign is committed to improving the wellbeing of workers in and outside the workplace. As part of the campaign, we have a free wellbeing workshop for SMEs and micro-organisations to help them build a wellbeing strategy. In fact, our online workshops in 2022 and 23 have been so successful that in 2024, we're taking the show on the road and visiting 6 cities across Great Britain to deliver these workshops face-to-face. Not only will SMEs and micros be able to learn how to develop a wellbeing strategy, but we are also awarding £10,000 to one organisation from each workshop to assist in the development and rollout of their strategy. So, on that exciting note, I'm going to open the floor to any questions. I've also popped up a slide here for you to get more information. Please feel free to drop any questions in the chat box, and you'll see there's 2 QR codes. The bigger one next to Being Well Together will put you in touch with our team, and I've also popped up the Keep Thriving QR code so that you can register for one of our workshops if you think it would be a good fit.
Thanks, Candice. Great presentation and a fantastic way to round off the year for the Being Well Together webinar series. We do have some questions, and fortunately we do have a decent amount of time to get through them, so I'll jump straight in. We have a question from Phil, which is, what training would you recommend that all line managers have?
Well, first of all, it depends. When it comes to line managers, I would encourage everyone to look at what skills your line managers already have, whether that's soft skills, formal skills, and what needs they individually have. But if I had to choose one training for all line managers, it would be a Start the Conversation training, giving line managers the skills and confidence to have difficult conversations and to signpost employees when they need support. I think it's really important that line managers don't feel they have to have the answers, but they do need to have the confidence to have these conversations and direct employees to people that can help.
Brilliant. Another question we have is from Stephen. He asks, is there a good place to start in trying to establish what the wellbeing education needs are of my workforce?
Ask them. I think it's very easy for employers to forget that the best source for information is already in front of them, whether it's through focus groups, through pulse surveys, speaking to people. Ask your employees what they need. Look at where they're missing skills and build your education plan around that, because you cannot expect to go out into, an education training resource and pick things off the shelf and thrust it at your employees. Because if you're providing training that they don't need or don't want, you're wasting money, you're wasting time, and you're wasting resource. So ask your employees first.
Excellent. Another question from Audrey. We provide a number of traditional wellbeing benefits, i.e. EAP, but we get low use. Are we missing a trick?
Yes and no. EAPs have notoriously low usage anyway. Most organizations find they have a very limited number of employees that use them. Something that can be quite useful, a lot of EAPs will give anonymous data. So organizations can see what's being used and what's not, and that can inform next steps. But equally, I will always come back to look at the data, look at what your employees need and your employees want, and build your initiatives around those needs, rather than taking off-the-shelf resources and expecting them to fix a problem that might not actually exist.
Excellent. Another question from Andy. You talk about knowing where you are going, but how do we figure that out?
Good one. When people join me on the Being Well Together program, I always start by asking them, why are you here? Why do you want a wellbeing strategy? Most people can answer that question, but if you can't, start really simply. What would you like to achieve over the next year through wellbeing? Oftentimes, aligning that with your business strategy can be really useful. If your organization is in a period of growth or consolidation or expansion, whatever the main thrust of the business is, sitting wellbeing alongside that will allow you to grow in the same direction and will allow wellbeing to support the wider business objectives, but also allow the wider business objectives to support wellbeing. So kind of to reiterate that, start looking at what you want to achieve from wellbeing. It can be a lofty visionary goal or something really pragmatic, and build from that place.
Excellent, thanks Candice. We've got another question from Nicola, who asks, well-being goes hand in hand with quality, but as with quality, how do we get genuine top-level management? Despite the knowledge that the return is significant, I know many companies who will not invest in the first instance.
It is a chicken and an egg for a lot of organizations, and I feel your pain there. We see it a lot. The best way that we have seen organizations who struggle to get that top-down buy-in to get started is to find one champion as high up in the organizational structure as you can. I would love to say that people lower down in the organization can be really passionate and it's going to get well-being onto the board level agenda. Unfortunately, that's rarely the case. Finding a champion who is prepared to listen, presenting to them with anecdotal information as well as the research, talking about the pain points within your organization, are all things that will help you get buy-in from the top. But ultimately, it is having that champion on the board level, at the SMT level, who's really pushing the agenda, who will enable you to start to release budget and cascade down through the organization.
Thanks, Candice. Another question, we've got lots of questions coming in. We will try and get to all of them. This one comes from Anna. How do you make your wellbeing initiatives more strategic rather than the fruit in the office offerings?
You've obviously heard me before talking about slinging fruit at the wall and seeing what sticks. Again, and I feel a little bit like a broken record, but I think this really speaks to where the need is. It starts with a plan. We talk about your wellbeing strategy beginning with that vision and then cascading down into the initiatives you have and then the actions that link to that initiative. Once that plan is in place and you know what the gold standard is, really where you're heading as an organization, you can look at the ways that you can achieve that. And as that flows through, it's going to become much more apparent what interventions are going to be useful. Now, I have heard organizations, a factory I was speaking with recently, and they put on a fruit bowl and toast and cereals for their workers all the time. And at the end of the week, the pantry is bare. So it's not to say that a fruit bowl isn't right for certain organizations, but in their case, they asked their employees. And during a challenging financial environment, actually having breakfast options and snacks at work was of real value to this organization. So starting with that plan about well-being, look at how you want to get involved, and then seeing what specific interventions are going to support that wider plan.
Great stuff. Another question from Fatima, who asks, hi, which departments do you believe should lead well-being?
Well-being has to be an integrated approach. There is no point in any one department working in isolation. When I spoke about this briefly today, taking well-being from good to great really starts to tip into culture, and there's no one department within an organization that can drive culture. The most successful organizations that I work with have somebody representing HR, health and safety, operations if it's relevant in that organization, and then someone from the senior team who are regularly working with me to support their well-being development. Well-being really has to straddle multiple departments. It can't be siloed, and it can't be seen as a niche within any organization. So Fatima, I'd really encourage you, no matter what department you're in within your organization, find well-being champions dotted around the organization that are going to help you build and drive your strategy forward.
Great stuff. Follow-up question actually from Fatima here. Is there a need for an organizational psychologist to come up with the well-being strategy? Can it be like-minded individuals across a company, or are further training qualifications required in business/organizational psychology?
No. I think this is actually a really interesting point and kind of builds on that fear and lack of confidence that a lot of line managers have about getting it wrong. Just like line managers are there to have useful, valuable conversations and signpost employees, the well-being team would be the same. If you identify a need in your organization for a workplace psychologist, then absolutely, but most organizations don't have that luxury, whether it's budget or volume within the organization. The well-being team ask good, relevant, curious questions to find out what the needs are within their organization. They look at the data from HR, from health and safety, and then they talk to their people. That is how the well-being strategy is built. The training, the interventions that come after that can be provided in-house or through third-party providers. But no, well-being is developed by people that know your people best, and that's those of you within the organization.
Excellent. Another question from Charles. What is or are the best well-being questionnaires that you can use for staff surveys?
Again, it depends. Here within the Being Well Together program, we have some really interesting assessments that look at both organizational provision for health, safety and well-being, and also employee perceptions of health, safety and well-being. What I love most about this two-pronged approach is that we're able to deliver a report that overlays the two. So an organization can say, well, we're doing great in all of these things. And then the employees come over and say, well, no, we don't do any of that stuff. So for me personally, and obviously I am biased, but I love this two-pronged approach that we're able to offer in the Being Well Together program. If you have other providers, then absolutely, there's a plethora of well-being surveys on the market. But ultimately, it comes back to what you do with the data and how you listen to your employees, take action, and build a coherent strategy that will allow you to support well-being on an ongoing basis. Surveys are great, but they're only one piece of a very large puzzle.
Great. I think that's actually it in terms of the questions for you, Candice. Thank you for answering them so comprehensively. I don't know if you have anything to finish with that you'd like to say before we conclude. I'll leave the floor open to you.
Wonderful. Well, I would love to thank everybody for being here with me today. And as you can see, you've got all of our details for the Being Well Together team and from Keep Thriving up on your screen now. If you have any other questions that you want to shoot our way, please get in touch. Wellbeing is a new area for so many people, and yes, we're a business, but we are also here to help, and that is really what we're passionate about. So reach out with your questions, get involved with Keep Thriving if you are one of those SME or micro organizations. The results have been incredible, so we would love to work with you. And yeah, Merry Christmas, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Candice. And just a quick reminder, and a thank you to you, our audience today, and indeed to all of our audience throughout 2023. It's been a very interesting journey that we've made through the Being Well Together webinars, and I hope it's kept you engaged and interested. I'd just like to point out before we conclude that we have a survey that will be sent out to you via email. Please do fill that out. It gives us some good indicators as to where to take these sessions next year. So without further ado, I'll draw this particular session and our 2023 series to a conclusion. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great restive and festive period if you celebrate. If not, we'll see you on the other side in 2024, and full details of our 2024 program will be available in due course. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.